Okay, let's unpack this. We've been handed a truly fascinating set of sources that explore a heavy but an incredibly relevant topic.
It is.
It's the paradox of constant learning. We read books, we listen to deep dives, we accumulate all this data. But why do we often feel so stuck, so rigid and reactive when it comes to actually changing?
It's the central frustration of modern self-improvement, isn't it?
Totally.
You know what you should do, but you still follow the same routine or, react in the exact same way. Our mission today is to deep dive into what the sources call the architecture of inheritance.
I love that phrase.
It's great. This invisible, pre-installed scaffolding of beliefs and habits that dictates, well, almost everything we think and do.
Architecture of inheritance. It's perfect. Because the core finding here is, it's kind of a revelation, actually.
Yeah,
Most of what occupies our mind isn't stuff we discovered through, careful experience. It's just inherited.
Right.
It's like being given a computer with an operating system already installed, and you never once check to see if it's the best one or if it has bugs.
That's exactly the frame we need. We're going to examine the fundamental difference between a mind that is just busy and a mind that is genuinely clear.
A full mind versus a clear mind.
Precisely. The sources make this case that adding more information to a flawed structure, to that inherited architecture, well, it doesn't lead to freedom.
It does the opposite.
It just reinforces the walls of the prison you're already in.
So how does this rigid architecture actually get constructed? I mean, where does all this material come from?
It's absorbed through repetition. That's the key mechanism.
Not through, conscious choice.
No, not really. We tend to think of learning as this big, effortful thing, but the sources point out that most of our mental structures are built slowly, brick by brick.
Just by repeating the same thoughts, same emotional responses.
Exactly. And that repetition, over time, it hardens into this rigid structure. The mind becomes crowded, fixed, and highly reactive because the structure is running the show, not you.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It turns life into this automated process. The dreaded autopilot.
The dreaded autopilot, yeah. And I think we all recognize that feeling of having a life that is, completely scripted.
Oh, for sure.
And the sources give some great concrete examples of how visible this is if you just stop and look.
Like basic routines.
Basic routines. You might commute the same way every single day, even when traffic changes, because that route is now just cemented in your brain.
That's a pretty benign example, but yeah.
It is, but it extends so much further, doesn't it? We find ourselves working in the same roles, having the same arguments.
Interacting through the same social hierarchies for years and years.
Yeah.
It's like we're playing characters who have already been written into a plot we didn't write.
Precisely. We adopt these prescribed roles without ever challenging the script. Think about how we instinctively adjust our language.
Oh, right?
Speaking differently to a manager than you do to a subordinate. Adjusting your tone based on who you think is in front of you, that's not a conscious choice.
No, that's the inherited social script running perfectly.
And the psychological cost of running on that autopilot, it must be huge because we lose the ability to actually steer.
Right.
And that's the critical distinction the sources want us to grasp. A mind can be incredibly full of knowledge, plans, activity, and still be deeply, deeply stuck.
So information accumulates, but awareness doesn't.
That's it. And if that information only reinforces the rigid boundaries of the architecture you inherited, it basically just acts like glue, makes the walls even harder to see.
So we've established that just being dizzy or knowledgeable isn't the solution. In fact, we might be making things worse.
We could be.
The sources pivot here to this idea of mental weight. The claim is that a truly healthy mind isn't the one that knows the most stuff.
No, it's the mind that can remain open. When the mind is just overloaded with unexamined beliefs, with conclusions you inherited, it loses its ability to respond freshly to anything.
That is a fascinating concept because we usually equate memory and knowledge with power. But here, they're suggesting that relying on memory actually prevents a genuine response.
It absolutely does. When we react only from memory, choice just disappears. You think you're making a decision.
But you're not.
You're just running an old program based on a past judgment or an inherited fear. So the sources argue very forcefully that freedom and creativity, they don't come from adding more content.
They come from creating space.
Space,
Yes.
That's so well put. A clear mind can pause and evaluate. A crowded mind can only repeat.
Exactly. And that space gets completely annihilated by what the sources call the identity trap.
The identity trap.
This is where intellectual exploration gets hijacked by attachment.
Let's detail that. Because this feels like a funnel that a lot of really intelligent people get caught in.
Mm-hmm.
You might start out reading widely, right? Philosophy, history, whatever. And as long as you read without attaching your sense of self to any one system, your thinking stays flexible.
You're absorbing data without signing up for the club? Right. But the moment you attach yourself to one ideology, one authority figure,
Right.
the moment you attach your identity to it,
The funnel narrows and the mind just slams shut. You start filtering every single piece of new information through that one lens.
even if you barely understand the original idea,
Especially then.
that transition seems harmless at first, but it quickly becomes destructive. The sources outline this dangerous progression.
It's like a psychological transformation.
It starts with objective information, something you learn, knowledge.
And almost immediately, that turns into belief. Knowledge is empirical, it's open to change, belief is fixed, it's personal, but it doesn't stop there.
No. Once it becomes a belief, it turns into defense.
Right?
Why do we feel the need to defend an idea so ferociously if we only just learned it?
Because it's not just an idea anymore, it's you. The moment you internalize a belief, structure, political, cultural, whatever, that structure fuses with your sense of identity. So you're defending yourself when you defend the idea.
So a threat to the idea feels like an existential threat to my whole self-concept.
It does, and this is the critical step. That defense ends inquiry.
You can't investigate something you were dedicated to defending.
You stop asking questions.
It's the identity wall. Once the idea becomes my belief or my culture, objectivity is just gone. The idea stops being examined.
It must be protected at all costs. Thought then turns into noise, a constant internal echo chamber that leaves no room for listening or learning. And what started as a guide
Hardens into a mental prison.
That's what the sources suggest.
And that idea connects perfectly to why we see so much intense, unresolvable conflict in the world. Conflict isn't usually about brand new ideas, is it?
No, it's generated by the mechanical repetition of old, unexamined ones.
Exactly. When ideas are passed down mechanically, generation to generation, they often lose the original insight that created them.
They just become habits. Rigid frameworks passed on without the context that made them useful in the first place.
And these inherited ideas are almost never questioned by the people who hold them. They're just defended, enforced, and passed on as eternal truth.
And this is where the sources get really interesting. They suggest the problem isn't the belief itself. It's the mechanism. It is the unexamined belief that causes all the suffering.
We are fighting over blueprints we never even drew.
That's a great way to put it.
To make this more concrete, let's use the case study the sources offer. It's one of the clearest examples of an invisible framework being inherited. Shame.
Yeah.
Specifically, the cultural construction of shame around sex and pleasure.
We have to look at this neutrally, just like the sources do. At its core, sex is a human experience. It involves pleasure and connection. Now, think about a child.
Right.
A child experiences intense pleasure from, say, eating a favorite food or being held. There is no moral judgment applied to that feeling of pleasure.
Right. Pleasure itself is totally neutral. It's just sensory data. So the question is, why does the natural human experience of sexual connection carry so much discomfort and secrecy and shame for billions of people?
It's not because the act is inherently wrong or harmful. The sources argue it's because ideas about it have been shaped by centuries of cultural, religious, and moral conditioning.
And then inherited.
We didn't observe the act and conclude it was shameful. We were told it was shameful by people who were just repeating what they were told.
So shame isn't an intrinsic part of the experience. It is learned. It's imposed by that inherited architecture.
It's a powerful illustration of how conditioning can just override pure perception. Think of the parallel they offer with scent.
Right.
A scent is just molecules in the air. We label a smell pleasant or unpleasant based entirely on association. If a scent was there during a happy event, we like it. If it's there during a traumatic event, we recoil.
The quality of the smell itself hasn't changed, only the label we attach to it.
Exactly. The same mechanism applies here. The act of sexual desire is natural. That's the scent. The inherited cultural conditioning instantly applies the label bad, guilty, secret.
That's the traumatic association.
Yes. And once that conditioning is internalized, the individual experiences this massive internal conflict. The natural desire of the body clashes with the inherited judgment of the mind. And guilt enters a situation where there was no inherent moral failing to begin with.
But connecting this back to the bigger picture, This is the danger we all face every day.
Yeah.
We are living inside these mental frameworks about everything. Money, success, relationships.
Frameworks we inherited and never once examined the blueprints for.
We're living in the water, completely unaware that we are wet.
We defend these invisible frameworks. We suffer because of them. We pass them on to the next generation, and we call it tradition, culture, or just normality.
So our suffering often stems directly from the architecture we inherited and never bothered to inspect.
That's the argument.
Okay, so if the problem is rooted in repetition, this inherited script, what does this mean for someone who wants to break free? The courses offer a solution that sounds almost too simple.
It does. Pause and choose.
Pause and choose.
It's simple in concept, but incredibly demanding in execution. And the sources are very clear about what this is not.
Right. It's not about throwing away all of society or rejecting tradition entirely.
And it's definitely not about replacing one belief system with another. That would just be more repetition.
It asks for something far simpler, but psychologically much harder.
Pause. Just pause. Interrupt the repetition. Create a tiny gap of space between the stimulus, the thing that happens to you, and your response, your automated reaction.
That gap is everything. It's the moment of entry for awareness.
It is. In that instant of pause, you interrupt the flow from that inherited structure straight to action. Without the pause, the script runs automatically. But with it, you are truly present.
That space, that momentary silence in the internal noise, that's the foundation. And once that foundation is laid, the path to freedom unfolds in this clear sequence the sources lay out. First, space allows for observation.
And observation means you finally see the mechanism. You see the inherited architecture in action rather than just reacting from inside it. You realize you have a script, but you are not defined by it.
And observation restores choice. Because the automated response is now visible, it's not automatic. You have the option to step outside that flow.
Choice, crucially, leads to responsibility. This means you own the response that follows. Rather than just blaming the inherited script or your culture for your reactions, you become the author, not the victim.
And responsibility leads to the deepest kind of understanding, the knowledge of yourself, of why you are operating that way.
And understanding, finally, leads to freedom. The whole sequence is laid out perfectly. The ultimate aim is perception that isn't filtered through borrowed, inherited ideas, an experience that is just more honest, more grounded, and more human.
We started this deep dive worried about why our minds are so crowded with inherited architecture. We found the path to freedom isn't about knowing more, but about creating space, a single moment of pause to stop the repetition.
It's the shift from fighting what is natural to simply living with awareness. This deep dive isn't about promoting or rejecting any specific tradition or belief system. It's simply about encouraging the act of seeing what is without that filter of conditioning.
So here is the question we want to leave you with based on all the material we've just covered. If you pause right now and truly observe your internal thought process, what is the one idea you defend most fiercely? The one argument you jump into every time that you suspect you inherited but have never truly examined?
Pause. See. Choose.